Let's bring in candidate for the Senate on the Republican side, Pat Toomey, with us on the Big Talker 1210. Hey, Pat, welcome back in, and I can see the good work you're doing. You're crisscrossing the state.
I am indeed driving south from Wilkes-Barre as we speak, but thanks for having me on the show, Don.
Well, thank you, Pat. Thanks very much. Give me a sense of what you think is the State of the Union. What's on your mind?
Look, it's very, very troubled, Dom. I mean, I agree with your point. The American people, and certainly people across Pennsylvania, are rising up and demanding that we get our government back, that a totally out of control government in Washington start to listen to the people and start to actually represent them. So you know, we're going to recover from this, Dom. The people are going to demand that we correct for a federal government that's really run out of control. It seems to be captured by the most liberal left wing of the Democratic Party, who try to take us on a lurch to the left, and we're going to have a major correction, and then we're going to sort this out. But we're going through some awfully tough times right now, and they're getting worse because some of the flawed policies that we're seeing in Washington.
Yeah, so you're sensing too, Pat, not just the issues that you and I have talked about, and you've been very consistent on these, but that people are melding these together, and that's what the Scott Brown race was about. And somebody in your position, that has to be pretty encouraging to see that Scott Brown could win in that state.
Well, let's face it, Massachusetts is a lot more liberal than Pennsylvania is.
Yeah.
And Massachusetts just elected a Republican to the Senate, and it was not all about health care. It was a lot about health care, but health care is just the most recent and maybe the most egregious and certainly the most personal of the efforts on the part of this government. Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, who seem to be running the show, and who are just trying to take us on this huge lurch to the left. I mean, Dom, it's the endless bailouts of failing companies. It's spending on a staggering level. It's debt that we can't afford. And then they come along and say, by the way, we're going to take over health care. Well, thank God the American people are reacting against this.
Well, absolutely. Now, Pat, I know that those have been the issues that you've stuck on, and I commend how disciplined you are to stick on these, because that's the paramount concern. But I saw in the Scott Brown race, and I'm hearing with listeners here, and I'm wondering across Pennsylvania, since the crotch bomber, and since we learned that under the direction of Eric Holder, he personally was responsible for this, we only had 50 minutes with a guy who knows where other bombers that he trained with are, and then we let him lawyer up. Are you hearing that the terrorism issue, because it played out in the Brown race big time?
Yeah, Dom, it's unforgivable what they've done here. Look, the federal government's first responsibility is to protect the American people. Here you have a guy who's bound and determined to commit mass murder against Americans. He's a terrorist. We know that. That's not even in question. And to think that they would let him, the first thing he does is we give him his Miranda rights and give him a lawyer. I mean, and then when they were challenged on this and said, well, you know, how are we going to get the information about, well, where does he come from and who's behind this and what kind of resources and who is coming next and where are they going to hit? You know, how are we going to get that information? And you know what their answer was? Well, he might give it to us if we offer him a plea bargain. Can you imagine we're even having this conversation, Dom?
And I would imagine across vast parts of Pennsylvania that you probably know better than I do, Pat, that has to reverberate, and that your opponent come the fall certainly can't defend that.
Well, here's the thing. Well, who's the opponent is question number one. But, you know, Joe Sestak, on the day that they announced that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the actual mastermind of September 11th, right, the day that they announced that he would be tried in a criminal court in Manhattan, which is an outrageous mistake, Joe Sestak went on TV repeatedly to defend the decision about how that was such a great thing.
Well,
this is fundamentally misreading that this is a war. These people are trying to kill as many Americans as possible. Our job is to stop them, not to lawyer them up.
Absolutely. Pat, I couldn't agree with you more. And in the infamous Washington show, in which you know, Sestak did take that position among all the other things that went on there.
Yeah, it's so far out of step with where Pennsylvania is now.
Well, Pat, is there anything new out there, too, that you see in the campaign, or are people just focusing on those issues in your travels and talking with people? Is there any other area that you've uncovered, too, that seems to be their focus?
There are a lot of things, you know, but the important thing is what you just said. It's focus. What are people focused on? They want this economy to grow. Mm-hmm. People want to provide for their families. They want a future for their kids. So they want a strong economy where jobs are growing, wages are rising, standard of living is increasing, and we know where that comes from, Dom. It does not come from just ever higher taxes and spending and a big bloated government. In fact, that makes it more difficult to reach the kind of economic prosperity that we're capable of. So I'm focusing, and I'm hearing from people all across Pennsylvania, let's focus on getting this economy moving again. You know, we can make some modest reforms to health care that'll help improve accessibility and help to lower costs, but we don't belong turning the whole system upside down, spending $1 trillion that we don't have, all kinds of tax increases and mandates. This was just a very ill-conceived approach. This government ought to be focused on growing the economy and creating jobs.
Absolutely. Pat Toomey, give the website for folks that want to help or see what you're all about.
ToomeyForSenate.com. I'd sure be grateful for your listeners to check it out. ToomeyForSenate.com. Join this effort to take back our government, restore some balance, some common sense, some fiscal discipline. Let's end the bailouts, and let's get the economy moving again.
Good stuff, Pat. Thank you for being in touch with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dom.
Pat Toomey with us, ToomeyForSenate.com. You can hook up with him there.